Well, in response to the horrors of a cooling world, true story, as George W. Bush leaves office, the planet will be cooler than it was when he entered. The year 1900 was warmer than the year 2000. I'm referring, of course, to your data, NASA's data, after it was adjusted, after two Canadians doing those jobs Americans won't do went and checked those numbers. So now we know things like this. We better act now. Here's what we know we're going to do. It's called a cap-and-trade rationing scheme. It's just like it sounds. It's being pressed upon you in the name of a false urgency. The Supreme Court ruled and said EPA must do this, and so Congress should step in and do it right. The Supreme Court said no such thing. I had the pleasure of representing the skeptic scientists in that case. What the court said is that EPA may regulate CO2 as a pollutant under the Clean Air Act, or explain why not, ground their decision not to in the Act. They have that option. They don't appear interested in pursuing it. It's a false urgency, and there's a one-line bill, Marsha Blackburn is the sponsor, saying that these Clean Air Acts shall not be used for this purpose as written, to remove the urgency and let Congress proceed deliberately. President-elect Obama is apparently not into that, and I'm going to explain why in a moment. It's a rationing scheme. It's a tax. It's the best kind of tax. It's a hidden tax. It's what's called a regulatory tax. The Congressional Budget Office says it quacks, swims, and flies like a duck. So join this man's organization, get your gun, and shoot this duck. Because it is an energy tax, hands down. But again, it's hidden. It's 4 to 5 times as expensive as just taxing carbon dioxide emissions. But it's more politically safe. It's more expensive because it is subject to gaming, it creates moral hazard, and there's a lot of things you have to do to hide the tax. This is precisely why you will find bootleggers with the Baptists pushing this. Okay, Enron started this in the US, GE bought their windmills, now they want to do it. BP has their solar panels, now they want to do it. Warren Buffett and others have their gas pipelines, so they want to do it. Some people have a lot of old coal-fired power plants and know the EPA has declared war on coal, so they want to do it, and have you pay them to build new gas plants, and so on. That's why you will hear, but even some of America's largest corporations support this, it must be the right thing to do, from people who have never said things like this in their life. Now, we are told that this will make us all rich from selling windmills to each other, but that has never happened in any country that has adopted this, and Europe has tried, and you're not being told the truth about what's going on over there. In fact, there's a draft piece of legislation. It wasn't assigned a bill number, but it's called Dingell-Boucher, our friend Rick Boucher. You're not going to believe this after I tell you about the bill, but it is considered too moderate for the House Democrats, so Henry Waxman from Hollywood has mounted a challenge against John Dingell, and Edward Markey from Massachusetts is challenging Boucher. I say go, Henry, go, because we need this thing to be as extreme as possible. Dingell-Boucher was called reasonable by the Chamber of Commerce. Let me tell you what it does. It has a provision for another refundable tax credit to a lot of people, not you, for the, quote, loss of purchasing power as a result of this act. And under the other amendment to the Internal Revenue Code, deeper in the bill, you'll see that loss of purchasing power under this act also means, or any other act of law. Okay, so it's actually not going to make us rich. It reduces your purchasing power. It certainly hits seniors and the poor first and worst. It is an energy tax. It chases jobs away. The laboratories of bureaucracy, Europe, have been trying this for several years. We have 2 new steel plants in America. Carroll County, Kentucky. It's called North American Stainless Steel, so of course it's a European company called Acerinox. And ThyssenKrupp down in Alabama. 32,000 construction jobs, 3,500 permanent steel jobs, manufacturing jobs. The kind I thought we wanted to keep, because you can't engage in this sort of energy-intensive capital investment in Europe under threat of an energy rationing scheme called cap and trade. What about this most recent European import we don't like? I don't know. But we're not apparently allowed to talk about this. I raised this to Mr. Boucher in a meeting, and he said it's far too early to call the European cap and trade scheme a failure. If all of the indicators were up instead of down, he would not say it's too early. It is a failure, and they are crying uncle while we are preparing to dive off. Here's how, well, wait a second. Senator Obama, you heard just before the election, said that under his cap and trade plan, electricity prices would necessarily skyrocket. It was the first intellectually honest thing someone has said about cap and trade as a politician yet. John McCain insisted that we not call cap and trade mandatory cap and trade. That's apparently me. But Senator Obama said that it would bankrupt coal. People who burn it, people who mine it. So no coal, no nuclear, no exploration for gas off the coast. We're apparently going to rely on electricity instead. That's the energy policy that got California killed. So, there are national security implications, quite clearly. Barring pixie dust, and if we find it, the environmentalists will claim that it causes respiratory problems and must be banned. We are going to be in deep trouble if we adopt this, just like Europe is. We must demand that the European scenario be honestly discussed here. Now, here's how it works. For example, we have 60 minutes between us, 7 minutes each. Say, purely hypothetical, I don't want to use the entire allotment of my time. I could sell the rest to someone else who wanted to use it. That's a cap-and-trade rationing scheme. Okay? Now, you either give the ration coupons away, as John McCain suggested, and Europe did, or you auction them or sell them, as President-elect Obama says he would do. No one has the political will to do this. I assure you that will not happen, but we should at least demand that. Because when they're given away, the ratepayer pays higher rates anyway. We learned this in Europe. Here's what happens. The utilities are given their book of ration coupons, and then they say, well, I could have sold them. So in fact, by using them, by creating or using electricity, I'm actually incurring a cost. And therefore, I'm increasing the cost of your rates. In Germany, in one country alone, in 1 year alone, there was a windfall profit of $5 billion with a B to utilities, understanding why some utilities are pushing this, from the cap-and-trade scheme. We're told we must do something. That's the rationale for this. This is something, therefore we must do it. But the problem is, it wouldn't do anything, and nobody claims it would. Nobody claims that even the Kyoto Protocol, which we signed 10 years ago tomorrow, so you know how honest the media treatment of the issue is, we signed Kyoto 10 years ago tomorrow. Nobody claims that if the Senate decided to ratify it, as they can, that it would do anything, even if Europe stopped cheating and just buying indulgences from China. This is about wealth transfer. This is about rents. That's the sole constituency, besides the Greens, are the rent-seeking utilities who have figured out a way to game this. Not every utility, just many. So, politically, here's the template. This is 1993 again. President-elect Obama has said he studied the Clinton administration transition and first 2 years, and he's not going to commit their sins that led to them losing control of Congress. In the Financial Times, November 3rd, 2006, Al Gore says they lost control of Congress because Clinton indulged my desire, not just for guns, but for a BTU tax. This is a BTU tax, except this actually makes BTU look like a tax cut. This is much bigger than the BTU tax, but it is precisely the template, and you have to remember, a Democratic Congress passed it by 1 vote, and a Democratic Senate came to the Clinton-Gore administration and said, not on our watch, son. And that was the equivalent of a government falling in Europe. We need to remember that here. People are telling us, well, you can't just say no. Well, some things you can just say no to. And remember, if they're looking for 93 as their template, so should we. What did we do right? This was a big win.